Hello, and thank you so much for joining for a special ISACA and IIA live conversation. We're excited to chat this morning with our opening keynote speaker for the 2024 GRC conference next month in Austin, Texas. I'm Paul Phillips, the Director of Event Content Development for ISACA, and I'm joined by Tanisha Landry, the Director of Programming for the IIA, and AI futurist, I struggle with that word, AI futurist, Zack Kass, who is our opening keynote. Now, Zack is an authority on tech and innovation who helps organizations harness the power of AI to enhance efficiency, improve productivity, and bolster employee satisfaction at reduced costs. He spent several pivotal years as the head of a go-to-market at OpenAI, channeling the company's innovative research into tangible business solutions. He helps demystify AI and help you understand the nuances and transformative possibilities of an AI-augmented future. But before we get started, for those of you that are joining us today, please tell us where you are in the world. Where are you joining us from? Just tell us in the comments and ask any questions that you have here today. We'll do our best to answer those questions for you. So let's get started. Tanisha, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that, Paul. It's great to be here with you and ISACA again, getting ready for the GRC 2024 conference. We're looking forward to this conference and having this conversation with you today, Zack. So you've done a lot. AI is like all over everything that you've accomplished so far. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about your career journey. Having spent so many years in AI already, people are talking about it, right? How did you get to your current position as a futurist?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's great to be here. I'm really looking forward to the conference, and looking forward to seeing you all in a month. I've spent 15 years now in AI, obviously most recently as the head of go-to-market at OpenAI, and my journey into AI is pretty lucky. I started working at a data labeling company in 2010, so early machine learning, and never left. So spent 6 years at this company called Crowdflower, now called Figure 8, which was very, very early in computer scale human data labeling, and then went to a company called Lilt, building large language models for the purposes of machine translation. And Lilt was also a pioneer in deep learning. Whereas deep learning has been around for 50 years, no one had actually been exploring it recently, and then found my way to OpenAI. Look, today that the title futurist means lots of things, and quite honestly, it's earned, not given. But I spend my time now basically talking about, thinking about, writing about the future of AGI and the intersection of AGI, artificial general intelligence, and society and the economy. And I get to do that across keynote speaking, boardroom advisory, content. I have a couple of books coming out, and I get to teach a class at the University of Virginia. So there's lots of ways in which I get to explore this stuff.
That's fascinating. Just being able to take what you've learned in a technology, as you mentioned, that has been around for years, that we're just now, as a whole, getting to touch and feel it and really interact with it a little bit. So when you think about what you've done and where you're going, as you prepare to engage people at the opening for the GRC conference, how have you seen, or how do you see AI impacting those who work in governance, risk, and compliance specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I think the complication right now is when we explore industries that are designed specifically to sort of reduce risk, the hardest part is that bad actors get first mover advantage anytime a new technology arrives. And the problem obviously there is it means that good actors, anyone in governance and compliance and risk, have to sort of react. And reacting is a disadvantaged position for a couple of reasons. And so I think what we're going to see over the next probably 5-10 years is a bunch of new interesting ways for these jobs to get harder. But at the same time, AI presents all sorts of incredible opportunity to improve governance, compliance, and risk. And so whereas bad actors have first mover advantage, good actors, historically speaking, have good actor advantage. And which is why the world gets better all the time. And generally we get better at maintaining complex systems all the time. And for every thing that gets more complicated on one of these axes or gets harder, there will be many things that get easier, especially in risk. And so right now we're so paranoid about the new cyber attack vectors. And I think we should instead be thinking about all the ways in which we're going to reduce the threat of cybercrime. And similarly, we're observing all sorts of new ways for people to be incompliant. And at the same time, we're introducing incredible new ways for compliance leaders to manage their worlds. So my thesis in all this is there's going to be this first mover, second mover game. And we're going to see this back and forth of measures and countermeasures where the industry behaves in a certain way and we're all forced to catch up. But in the long run, new technology is always advantage good guy.
That's, you know what, I like that. I like how you position the good actor, and those in the role of GRC can become the good actors and really taking advantage of learning technology and moving forward. So, and I guess in what ways do you feel like AI can be leveraged to improve risk management practices within organizations?
Well, AI broadly is going to do a lot of things that automate most of the computational work that we do. And so at some limit, the amount that the amount of sort of rote work that any human will need to do probably reduces to some, de minimis point. There is so much rote work required in risk and compliance, right? If you sort of imagine in a physical world, the things that you had to do to secure a building 100 years ago, right? Before we had security cameras, the number of keys that needed to be maintained, the number of locks that needed to be locked, the amount of redundancy that needed to be baked into securing a physical premise is actually much less than is required today because we have so many systems that can sort of automate the security of a physical building. Now, that being said, there are a bunch of new attack vectors in buildings because we obviously, bad guys didn't have, for example, systems that could sort of digitally or virtually enter a premises. But that being said, I think what we're going to see over the next 3-5 years is the automation of all of these redundancies, of all these business practices that require a lock and key. And we're going to reduce the amount of friction that's required by humans, right? There's just a bunch of stuff that we have to do to secure our lives that is not fun. But 2, the amount of error that exists in the system. And so broadly, I think the world is going to continue to get safer and continue to get more livable as the amount of things that people need to do to secure themselves and live start to automate around us.
That's awesome. That's interesting. They're creating a balance between what could be errors from the human element, but then what processes are automated to help us with security. So I like that piece. And then it just makes me think a little bit about ethical considerations, right? So as we're becoming good actors and onboarding technology to automate practices and taking advantage of the efficiencies that exist, then there's also some ethical considerations we need to put into place as well. So how should GRC individuals at organizations approach the ethical implications of using AI in governance and compliance?
I think that I sort of have a hot take on this that I'm willing to share pretty freely. I don't know that AI introduces any new ethical considerations that a technology before it didn't, which is to say there are a lot of laws that govern how businesses need to be run today, especially in the fields that a lot of your association members operate in, right? If you work in compliance, there's a high likelihood that you work in an industry or a field that has a bunch of laws that govern what you must and must not do. And the compliance leaders inside of these businesses are sort of constantly working with or sort of receiving information from regulators and policymakers to say, okay, here's what we need to do to be in compliance with the laws. I don't know that we actually need to introduce too many new laws. There are 3 laws that I hope we see passed vis-a-vis AI. One of them is around alignment, and we'll talk more about alignment at GRC. One of them is explainability. We'll also talk more about explainability, and one of them is bad acting. The problem right now is that's not actually what the policy that people are passing. And so what's happening is people are getting so worked up about this idea of ethics, when in fact, there aren't like new risks and issues that AI introduced today that the laws don't already govern, right? There are things that you should and should not do as a business owner and as a business manager. Broadly, my belief is that AI is actually going to make the world a much, much more ethical world, because in a world that struggles to explain itself, humans broadly struggle to explain ourselves, right? In part because we don't understand our most innate bias, but also because even if we did understand all of our bias, we would never offer it, right? We would never admit to it freely. No one would ever say in a hiring discussion, I had a broken relationship with my father, and therefore I don't like to hire men. And so, but that exists, right? These things exist in all of us. The most interesting thing about AI is it's actually pretty egoless. It's very willing to explain itself. And in a world where we all, have some smattering of the 50 biases that exist, AI is no exception, but it's very willing to sort of say, this is what I can and cannot agree to, and this is why. So my assessment on all this is that AI ethics is actually a lot of hand-wringing right now. But in fact, government, policymakers, regulators have done a pretty extensive job in most industries of saying this is what you should and should not do. And AI doesn't actually introduce a whole lot of new stuff there.
That's really good. I really like hearing your perspective, and that's why you're a futurist, right? You've taken what you know and what you've learned and really starting to apply it to what you see in the future. So I really enjoy hearing that. Thank you so much from that piece. You talked a little bit about the 3 things that we are going to hear from you at the GRC conference. Without spoiling anything else, what's one thing that you are hoping people that are participating in the GRC conference can gain or going to expect from your speech, your session?
Yeah, we try to, in all of these discussions, we really work hard to help people leave these meetings and events feeling like they have a new sort of macro view on AI. I think too often what's happening right now is people are going into workshops and saying, here's how you do prompt engineering, or they're going to, maybe a more technical conference and saying, here's how AI gets made, right? Here are the nuts and bolts work. Or they're going to, an AI ethics event and talking about, hand-wringing about all the new problems that AI presents. And in fact, what most people need, in my opinion, is to actually have the opportunity to just zoom out a bunch and say, assuming this is all going to happen, what is this going to look like, right? How do our lives day to day change, and how do we prepare ourselves for these inevitable changes? Because we become a society that is sort of overwhelmed by negative information, and that's not really fair to any of us, because we've never in our biological history had to process this much information, let alone this much negative information, and it's flooding our brain with some really scary ideas. And in fact, the thing to do is probably to zoom out a bunch as much as possible now and start to project into the future what might happen, so that we can sort of rationally think about the pros and cons, the trade-offs, and the preparations. So my goal in everything I do is to give people some bigger perspective, not so that they can be as, sycophantic about the future as I am. I expect, that very few people are going to be as optimistic as I am, which is fine. I'm predisposed to it. But so that people can say, yeah, I've considered how all this might work, and it gives me some basis to make the decisions and the conclusions that I'm making today. And it gives me some level of excitement about why I should be or shouldn't be investing in this.
That's really good. I like the zoom out aspects. So that's both a key takeaway, a main lesson. And it sounds like if I were to ask you, what should professionals do to stay ahead? Zoom out is one of the best things that you can do. Zoom out and learn. Anything else that you want to add?
Zoom out. And look, one of the things I remind everyone of is that today is the best day ever to be born. The world gets better all the time. It just does. And I think too often we are not introduced to the idea that today is a great day to be alive, for all sorts of reasons. By the way, some of them are sort of more nefarious and ugly than others, but some of these reasons are the simple fact that we're just consuming more information, and because we don't make utopian films, and because there is not an incredible incentive by the news media to paint these panacea and utopian pictures, we're actually left to sort of only consider how the world gets worse from here, which is crazy because after 100,000 years of existence, it's basically only gotten better. And so one of the things that I will remind people is that unless you can convince me or yourself that we are somehow reversing this trend, the world is going to continue to get better. And in fact, it may start to get better at a very super linear scale, right? There are plenty of things that are weird today, and there are plenty of things that we need to work out. But tomorrow will be the best day ever to be born. And that trend, we just don't see any reason that it shouldn't continue. Because at the end of the day, humans are good, and we're getting a whole lot better at building a world for ourselves.
I like that. I like how you take that together very nicely. So we're going to get a whole lot better every day, and there's going to be a lot of good. So why not become the best actor you can in making sure that we're safe, compliant, and ready for the future? This has been exciting. I know there's more that's going to be coming as soon as we get to Austin for the conference in just next month. So Paul is back. I am welcome back, Paul. He's one to jump in on the fun as well, I think.
Yes, well, I think this was a great conversation. Thank you, Tanisha and Zack. Zack, I asked all of our AI experts this question. Sounds like a silly question, but can't help to ask. You're familiar with Will Smith and AI Robot, the movie? Is that possible?
You mean is that the I Am Sam or is the iRobot?
iRobot.
Oh yeah, iRobot. Well, I mean, yes, humanoids at scale are possible, but my reminder to everyone is in the same way that like the Terminator exists, these are films designed, these are dystopian films designed to terrify you because that's what sells tickets.
Yes.
Anchoring a future to a Hollywood film is problematic for all sorts of reasons. Is building an army of humanoid robots conceivably possible? Absolutely. Is the army of humanoid robots coming online and destroying civilization possible? Sure. Is it going to happen? No. It's just not going to happen. For reasons that we can discuss in a little bit. I think that there are a bunch of, like if you want to talk about the films that actually spook me, the dystopian and post-apocalyptic films about AI that I think are most haunting are Her by Joaquin Phoenix, in which a man falls in love with a humanoid robot. Mm-hmm. Because that seems very, 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 very possible. And that sort of dehumanization as a result of AI would be bad. And the other one that scares me is WALL-E. This idea that we will actually devolve intellectually because of AI. These are two, I think, pretty serious risks. And I don't think that they are likely, but I think that they need to be discussed, and we will discuss them at GRC.
Awesome. Well, possible but not probable is the way I'll take that.
I agree with, in the rich tradition of risk and compliance, possible but not probable is exactly how I would put this.
Exactly. Great. Well, Zack, thank you so much for your expertise. And thank you, Tanisha, for the conversation. And thank you to everyone that joined our conversation. To be honest, I can't wait to learn more from Zack and all of our exceptional speakers that are going to be speaking at our GRC conference in August, in about a month from now. And I hope those of you that have joined us today will join us at our conference. If you're considering doing so, visit the conference link in the comments of this video to register for the globally recognized event co-hosted by us, ISACA, and the IIA. And I wish all of you, Zack, Tanisha, and all of our listeners a great day.